All right. Hello, everybody. I'll let everybody file in tonight, and we're going to talk about something that is very basic, very fundamental, but it seems we screw it up. And that's talking about food. It's talking about what to eat. So while we wait for folks to come in, I'm going to pull up some things that we're going to look at tonight. So this is a big topic. I'm not going to try to get too deep into it because we could be here forever. I actually do want to kind of keep this one short tonight. But food is something that we eat 3 times a day, sometimes less, sometimes more, and it's very important that we. It's just very important that we choose what we put inside of our bodies because it does have a huge effect on our health outcomes. While we're waiting for them, just going to pull some of these things up, and I'm going to check and see if our audio is good. All right, one more minute, and we'll kick this thing off. Okay. Uh, we're going to go ahead and get started. So I thought long and hard about what I want to talk about for this week, and the answer just kind of simply came just from doing stuff in the office. It's really, really hard and difficult at times to get people to eat right. And I'm not even talking about forcing yourself to count macros, like how much carbs, how much fat, how much protein. Um, you've got nutritionists, you got dietitians that can get really deep down into that. I keep it a lot more simple. We really just need to understand how food works in our bodies to create health or disease because it can create both. The other thing is we have to understand the quality of our food because it sucks. It's really bad. And we're going to go over a few different ways that it's really bad. We're familiar with glyphosate. That's everywhere. It's in a lot of foods. Always in the news. It was just in the news recently with the Girl Scout cookies testing for unacceptable levels of glyphosate, lead, all sorts of nasty stuff. So, the title of this video, like in the thumbnail, is like a toxic table and a depleted plate. And that's kind of the two-pronged challenge that we face with food today. In that on the one hand, it's really toxic from cell cultured meat, which is just another way of saying lab grown meat, the fake meat, uh, to food that has just completely lost all of its nutritional value, whether it's through bad agricultural practices. It's bad. It's bad. And we really have to be proactive with the foods that we choose and how we prepare them, or our body is just not going to be able to function the way it is. And when you have cellular dysfunction, that is kind of like a definition of disease, just cellular dysfunction. The cell is toxic and the cell doesn't have the nutrients, it breaks and it can't work. Yeah. Doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. So Why don't we go ahead and start with easiest place? Let's just start picking on the standard American diet. So, there's a reason we call it that because the acronym is SAD, and it really is a sad diet. Others call it modern American diet, MAD. Either way you want to look at it, it's a piss poor diet. It really sucks, and it plays a lot of problems in people's health. Now, a lot of us already are aware there's a lot of ultra processed foods, sugar, and what we would call industrial oils. Another way to put in that would be some people say seed oils, other people say that could include seed oils. It can also include oils that have been highly, 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 highly processed, and it can also refer to oils that aren't edible but are marketed to be edible. We'll get into that one here in a minute. But all of these foods, they do have one. Well, we'll say they got three things in common. They are stripped to death of whatever nutrients that they may have had, the processing from the bleaching to the high temperature, uh, we say degradation that causes it to go rancid. You also have toxic chemicals that are put in. I just said bleaching. And yeah, we do bleach our food. Sugar, flour. If you ever flip on the back of it, says enriched bleached flour. You're like, what the heck does that even mean? Well, it means exactly what it says. They bleached it in order to get it white or strip it down, or they stripped it down and then they've had to re-enrich it, like put back in nutrients that they took out. And oftentimes those nutrients, like we were talking about with supplements last week, sometimes they're synthetic or they're such an inferior quality that they can cause issues. So, in terms of the enriching process, those enriched ingredients that they put in can actually be harmful. In fact, let me just type in potassium bromate and see if I'm thinking correctly on this one. So I'm bringing up potassium bromate because that is one thing that they do put in flowers, and potassium bromate unfortunately has links to cancer. It's a food additive. It's been banned in Europe. It's been banned in it's probably been banned in other places too. There's actually a lot of foods. There's a lot of things America cannot export to other countries because it contains banned products that those countries say is toxic. It's not safe, or their research shows that it is correlated. It contributes to really bad illnesses like cancer. But apparently, it's okay for us to eat. But it's good for us to have some of this information at hand because something like that will help you understand what you've been putting in your body and will help motivate you to make better food decisions. Because I find this is really difficult for people to do, and it's not hard. It's really a matter of willpower, and also I say education. People got to learn how to eat. They have to learn how to eat correctly. And I find this is just one of the harder areas to get people into, um, not compliance with any particular diet, but just to take care of their own diet, to not go out and eat fast food constantly, to actually make foods at home, make better choices, put down the Crisco, quit using the vegetable oil, and actually cook with some olive oil or coconut oil. Quit frying their foods, quit battering everything in bread. Where I am in the Southeast, bread is in everything. We fry all of our foods. We like to coat them in a nice batter. Yes, I know it's delicious, but you shouldn't be doing it constantly because you can be putting a lot of rancid oils in your body, and you could be putting a lot of low quality um, processed carbohydrates that are going to be bad for blood sugar, bad for blood pressure, bad for your gut in general, tons of gut inflammation. And these things also can wreck your hormones and mess with your behavior and cognitive function. So we've got a lot of things we can look at. And two, if anybody's got foods or just something on topic that they want to talk about tonight, just add it into the chat. I don't want to turn this into a long lecture, but I really do just want to kind of impress it upon y'all that you really do need to work on your diets. We can always improve that, whether it's food quality or just substituting out, switching out things that are unhealthy for something that's better. The simple thing is sugar. Sugar, you can replace that either with honey or with any type of natural sweetener. Um, Certainly, if you're using artificial sugars like sweet and low, um, aspartame, we'll get into that here in a minute. But it's some stuff like this. We call it very low hanging fruit. You got to go to the grocery store. You got to go buy your food. You're going to be there. It's not something that you skip out on. And for those that do skip a lot of meals, I'm going to say that's not healthy either. That tends to put the body in a very stressed state and think that it's in a famine, and it can cause additional weight gain by not eating enough. It's kind of paradoxical, as strange as that sounds. People who don't eat enough, their bodies can sometimes end up putting on a lot of weight because the body thinks every calorie it's eating it needs to store. So let's just talk a couple of statistics. You got 88% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. They got some type of metabolic syndrome. And so when we talk about our standard American diet, it's really calorie rich, but nutrient wise, there's hardly anything in there. It's not just nutrient deficient, it's like nutrient depleted. And that's really important. I don't really care so much about calories. Yeah, they have their place, but nutrition is what you want to look for. And the nutritional quality of your meal plays a role in how you feel in terms of hunger. It might be good to just mention this right now that your body will send signals to eat when it needs nutrients. And if you eat a nutrient dense meal, you feel satiated. We call it satiety. If you eat good protein as well, that really tends to make people satiated. I love steaks. Um, I love red meat. I don't have any qualms with it. I think it's gotten a very bad rap. I think it is extremely good, healthy food to eat, and I encourage people to look into that. Not to be afraid of meat, and fats as well. Like meats, like fats, carbs. I think in America people overeat a lot, and it causes a lot of unnecessary problems. So we'll get into the different types of diets and what I see and my colleagues see has benefit for people's health here towards the end. But right now, we want to focus on just some facts about our own diet here. We had the food pyramid was kind of based on this guy named Ansel Keys. You can go look him up, but it's like what we call like a fat heart hypothesis, which kind of, and there's a lot of cherry pick data for that. If anybody wants to go down conspiracy rabbit holes and see kind of how like your big food industries or your big agriculture industries want to pay essentially or would pay to affect the outcomes, or not even the outcomes, but what's the word I'm looking for? They would affect the messaging and what the government would recommend in terms of healthy food. And so you end up having a lot of carbohydrates, a lot of grains. We subsidize a lot of grains in America, whether it's corn, whether it's wheat, soybeans. And unfortunately, all of those usually are genetically modified and really poor nutrient quality and full of toxins, which doesn't help what the food pyramid is already pushing. So you have like corporate influence. There we go. So you have grain lobbies. They can push for so many like unnecessary, I would say, servings of carbohydrates. You have your vegetable oil companies. You've got stuff like Crisco, And you would see a lot of this money lobbied to fund things like American Heart Association or just different medical bodies, or lobby politicians to get stuff passed through. So, you can see there's a lot of money and corruption that can get into this if you choose to look down that rabbit hole. But the point is that you had like little bits of meat kind of here and there, but really you want to eat a whole bunch of grains. So you're talking about a lot of sugars that can turn fast acting. Like bread can act as fast or faster than just eating sugar, like table sugar itself. And what's another huge problem that everybody's got now? Diabetes or out of control blood sugar. Used to be rare occurrence. You wouldn't see people have that, and now it's an epidemic. Then you've got low fat crazes that we're still suffering from the ramifications of. People think that eating fat makes you fat, and that fat leads to whether it's high cholesterol or ultimately they're looking at leading to heart disease. Um, I don't subscribe to that. There's plenty of good doctors and research out there that I think is absolutely counter to that. Jack Wolfson, the natural heart doctor, is a cardiologist who talks a lot about this and what really causes cardiovascular issues and cholesterol. I look at more as a liver problem, a dental problem, and a toxin problem, particularly bacterial and mold toxins, which we have a lot of those within our food supply because we store things for such a long time. But that's a topic for another day. So let's talk about soil depletion. Whenever I mention, how is food not nutritious? Maybe we can understand that the food has got a lot of toxic stuff because of all the pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, insecticides, the glyphosates, and um, all that that's sprayed on the food. But how is our food like no longer have nutrition? How does that even happen? Well, part of it happens because we have depleted the nutrients within our soil. Now, we have what's called an NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And those are, key ingredients or key minerals that are needed to make food grow. But you need a lot more minerals and other nutrients in the soil in order to make the food actually healthy and be able to yield. So it's like if there's just nothing in the soil, then the plant can't just magically bring that in and then give it to you. If it's not there, the plant just can't do much. And so you're going to start having less nutrition. Now, we can get into a few of these things here, but modern industrial farming, we have what's called monocrop farming. The idea that you never turn the soil over, so you're not growing different foods that kind of help manage the soil over time, and you're not letting the soil rest. And then when you spray a bunch of these poisons like glyphosate on there, you are chelating, meaning that you're actually sucking up a lot of the good metals or minerals that are in the soil. It's binding it up and it can't be used by the plant. And or it also kills a lot of the microbes that are in the soil. Now, you've probably heard me talk a lot about bacteria, fungus, and parasites serve a role in nature, and they serve that same role in our bodies that they metabolize. They try to clean up our internal terrain. Well, they do that in the soil, and when you put something like glyphosate, it kills them because glyphosate is was I don't remember if it was originally studied, but it is classified if it was originally studied as a antibiotic, but it is classified as a very potent broad spectrum like antibiotic that has a really strange affinity for killing like selectively the good bugs. So we'll get into poisons that you're inadvertently eating in your food in a minute with glyphosate and how that's actually wrecking your microbiome. It's like eating an antibiotic daily. But these type of practices are one, they're stripping the soil all of its nutrients. They're killing the microbes that actually tend the soil and make the soil alive and rich and impart their own stuff into the soil. you're killing the ecosystems. You got a barren soil, and the only way that crops can end up growing today, because it is by having like this synthetic soil, these simple nutrients, which create weak, which creates weak produce, weak vegetation that is not able to fend off naturally against predators. So you end up having the insects and stuff come in and try to eat it because they smell it, or well, I won't say they smell it, but they can sense it. They can sense that this is a weak and nutritious dying plant that they should eat. And so you get weak vegetation that kind of our natural trash cans come in, like, we'll say flies, worms, bugs, all your stuff comes in to eat them because it's unhealthy. And then you have to spray pesticides on it in order to keep them off of it, which further depletes the soil, which further weakens the vegetation, which um, sends out more signals for the bugs to come and eat them. So you see, you got a vicious cycle that keeps going around and round and round and round and round. And I know people were making a fuss about RFK Jr. with being on board with Trump extending the use of or using glyphosate and fertilizers as like a matter of national security or national defense. It's a sticky situation to be in, but RFK probably made the right call in doing that because fixing the soil is not going to be a very quick process, and America still has to eat. It sucks. It's a rock and a hard place, but it's unfortunately the state of our soil right now is that putting it in an environment on such a massive scale, you're going to have fun. If you try to put those good practices back in, I don't know that you're going to get the yield of crops that are absolutely necessary to feed the nation. So the only reason why I bring that up is when you screw up something so bad, such as depleting the soil, it's not going to come back overnight. There's a lot of great things that we can do, biodynamic farming, um, um, fermenting a number of things into the soil, but it's not a quick fix process. We've really screwed up our nation's soils, and this is going to be a long term process. And so, what does that mean for you when you're trying to figure out what food you have to eat? Well, you either go local. I mean, it really kind of gets simple as this: you either go local or you learn to be very wise where you shop, what to look out for, and how you pick your food. Now, when it comes to the GMOs, glyphosate, pesticides. And right now, I'm really kind of keeping this to the vegetation side. We'll get into the animal meats in just a second here, but GMOs is a genetically modified crop. GMOs, without getting too deep into the science of it, the body responds to it differently. It causes a lot of unnecessary inflammation in the body, makes the body sick. Body kind of looks at it more like poison. GMO crops. Um, let me just think for a second, because where my mind's going with some of this stuff is when you make GMO crops, then you can design them where they will only work with certain pesticides or they won't grow at all. And so you end up creating a captured market for farmers where they can't get things to grow unless they spray pesticides. But that's not necessarily relevant to what you're doing when you're shopping. I will just leave it. GMOs, just stay away from them. They cause a lot of inflammation in the body, and inflammation is going to lead you towards a route of sickness. They're not nutritionally dense. Yeah, and as I just said, a lot of times there's kind of like it's not it's not a defect, it's a feature that it won't grow unless you spray it with poisons like, glyphosate. So they're highly, highly, highly intoxicated with with these pesticides, herbicides, and stuff. So you just want to stay away from them. Anything that you see that food wise that says bioengineered product or genetically engineered ingredient, you get a little sophisticated with the terms that they use. Used to, you just see it says genetically modified or genetically engineered. Now you say it is a bioengineered ingredient, and there'll probably be new ones that'll come up soon. Well, the point is, if something says that explicitly on it, just know it's probably going to cause you inflammation. It's probably not going to be good for you. Glyphosate too. I know it gets a bad rap as it should, but there's other ones. There's atrazine. There's so many other chemicals, and we test for them. And a lot of times we see people are just sky high. In fact, I hardly ever see any type of environmental chemical panel or total tox burden panel come back that doesn't have insanely high levels of glyphosate or BPA. Two things that are just littered all over our food. It's bad. I mean, it's bad. There's a lot of poisons that are in our food. One thing I'll touch on, since I did mention BPA, BPA is a plastic or plasticizer, and you go to the grocery store, you could hardly get any food that doesn't have or that's not in some type of container. Even your meat's going to be wrapped in cellophane. So you're going to be getting a lot of synthetic, usually plastic, on your food. And I believe the statistic is still it's either a credit card size of plastic that you ingest every 2 weeks, or it's two credit cards every week. Regardless, it's bad. You're eating a lot of plastic that you're like, I don't know where this is coming from. It's in the food. It's in the water too. We haven't even talked about the water, but um, a lot of these a lot of these chemicals, they get into the food either just from packaging it or from being sprayed, or just gets into the groundwater, and that groundwater is what ends up feeding, uh, watering the soil, and then whatever is inside of there ends up trickling into our waterways and our sewage treatment plants. And a lot of times, depending on where you live, you may actually have an ozone water treatment plant. That's great, but a lot of times you're having chemical treatment plants, and so the water is treated with chemicals. It can make the water safe, so you're not going to be just ingesting a lot of giardia or other not fun parasites, but the water itself is not healthy. Now, I will make a quick mention here. You can look up a thing called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. Clean 15 are foods that you can purchase that don't have to be organic, and they're usually relatively clean. It's clean or free of uh, pesticides, or I should say, like a lower burden. The Dirty Dozen is something that you really don't want to purchase unless it is organic. I don't have the list in front of me. Maybe I can pull it up here in a minute. But just look up Clean 15, Dirty Dozen. That's a great way to look at shopping at a glance, to get things that, to know where you should be spending your money. I get it. Organic, people charge a premium for. It is becoming a lot more popular, so prices are coming down some places, but people still charge a premium to have that organic label. Organic label too doesn't mean that there's no spraying, or that there's no. It doesn't mean that there's no pesticides and stuff in the food. It just means that there's a certain criteria, like a certain number of time. I don't remember if it's 2 years or 3 years, but there is like a criteria that says that you can't have been using these things on the soil for um, a certain amount of time, and other things that go into it as well. So I say it's comparatively cleaner to the conventional method, but yeah, as far as the Clean 15, the Dirty Dozen, some things are worth shelling out the money for organic. Other things you can kind of get away from. And I would say too, anytime you can go to a farmer's market, buy from there. It's local to your area. The soil is what it has kind of the microbiome, the microbes that you're used to. There is something to be said about eating food that's grown in your area versus stuff that's overseas or even out of state. Um, there is something about how it's crafted in that ecosystem, in that environment, that confers extra benefit to you. The only the only thing I can think of at the moment would be people eating local honey as a means to kind of help them either resist or overcome the allergy season that's coming up. So, the local pollen, you're eating that, your body's getting used to it. It supposedly helps you either not get sick with allergies or it significantly lessens it. And, it kind of makes sense. You're getting these small doses. Your body's getting that information. It kind of knows what's coming up, and it can start mounting. I don't want to say a defense against it, but it's information your body's taking in. So, all that being said, I'm going to move on here to things like seed oils. It's important for us to talk about the carbs that we eat, the fats that we eat, and the proteins that we eat. That's what makes up food, and I want you guys to take this practically and start seeing where you can improve what you're buying and how you're preparing your own meals. So let's just start with the industrial seed oils. A lot of these, first, I'll just say a seed oil, like, what does that even mean? It comes from a seed. So there's seed oils and there's fruit oils. I'm just going to largely leave it to that. Fruit oils, olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil. Seed oils, we'll say your vegetable oils. You could put canola. Canola is supposed to be, well, we'll just say vegetable oils, canola, rapeseed oil. That sounds horrible, but that's actually what it's called, rapeseed oil. Um, there are some that I don't want to lump into this. Sesame seed. For any Asian dishes, sesame seed oil is used a lot. It's got a very nice kind of nutty flavor. It is a seed oil, but I think it's fine. I probably wouldn't go crazy with it. One, it's pretty expensive and doesn't yield that much anyway. Um, and I will say that any of the oils that you get, you actually want to do your research. You might even want to start ordering this stuff online because you'll find, even with good olive oils, or supposedly good organic olive oils, you'll find people get really cutthroat. Companies will really can really undercut. Um, Olive oil is a big business, and you definitely have connoisseurs and discerning palates for quality olive oil. And while I can't really think of what the research is right now, it's pretty interesting to see that you've got folks that or companies that will cut their olive oil with vegetable oil in there. And that's important to me because because these oils can cause a lot of damage to your liver, to your intestines, to your cardiovascular system. Now, oils, I think, we don't think we appreciate just how important they are. You know that all of your cells are made from fat. Your cell membranes, which actually controls all the stuff that comes in and comes out, is made of fat. And if you are ingesting bad, damaged, rancid fats, your cells are going to be made out of very poor ingredients in there, and you risk not functioning well. And depending on who you talk to, you will find some doctors, scientists, researchers, whatever, that will say, the cell membrane is just as important as the nucleus, or even more important than the nucleus because of its function. So, fats are extremely important. One, you absolutely need them in your diet, and you need them in a lot more amount. I would say you need them in a lot more amount than our low fat diet culture has led us to believe. So, seed oil is what we don't want to be eating. They're unstable. They oxidize, or we'll just say they turn rancid really easily. Um, a lot of times they get I'm trying to think of where the statistic was. It was really shocking, but it was like the average time of getting vegetable oil or canola oil to market, or you would just say like your standard oils that you find in not glass jugs, but flimsy plastic that you can squish. Which that's the bad container. Avoid anything that's not in a glass jar. That'll save you from getting unwanted plastic in your oils. But I believe it was, 7 years from the time that oil is produced to the time that it hits the shelf. Sometimes it gets up to 7 years. That's ridiculous. Oil or fat, it spoils pretty quickly. It doesn't have that long of a shelf life. And once oil is spoiled, you really don't wanna be eating that. It's one thing to maybe have a grain or something, but you really don't wanna be eating fat that's past its expiration date. So, they're cheap oils. It's really hard to get away from them. But if there's one thing you could do with your diet, cut out the seed oils. Replace it with, coconut oil or avocado oil if you're going to cook high temperature. If you're going to cook things on low or medium temperature, uh, butter's great for that. Olive oil is great for that. Ghee is, it's like the extra step past butter. You can usually cook pretty high with that. And I'm not gonna lie, buying quality oil is gonna eat into your food budget. So, but you should make that a non-negotiable. Look up all this stuff for yourself. But I think if you look into these things about oils, you'll see that it pays to get quality oil because it's going to be helping you build a healthy body rather than giving you a lot of unnecessary inflammation that can lead to some really nasty diseases later on. So, a lot of these seed oils, they're extremely high in inflammatory omega 6 fatty acids. We do need fat omega 6, but a lot of times the American diet gives us way too much that it becomes a problem. We do have kind of an ideal omega 6 ratio to omega 3, which omega 3s are usually found in your healthy oils. Your fish oil, fish oil or fish, the fats in your animal fats and whatnot. You want it around 2 to 1. The modern diet is usually 20 to 1 in terms of omega 6 to omega 3. So that's over a 3 times difference. It's like 3.5 times difference. And two, when you heat up a lot of these seed oils, they create toxic byproducts. So not only are they bad on their own, but once you start using them and cooking them, they create their own problems. And then they're not stable without a lot of chemical processing or just a lot of processing in general. So I know that's a lot of information on fats, but the takeaway is butter, ghee, your natural animal fats. Beef tallow is great. It's healthy. Yeah, I believe you can cook pretty high temperatures with that. You could do pork lard as well. Not a big fan of pork. Just porks tend to have a lot of parasites. They're nature's garbage cans. They don't really sweat. They carry a lot of toxins in their food. Not in their food, but in their meat. I just, I just limit some of your pork, but it's better than a seed oil in my opinion. Now, as far as fake meats, it's crazy that we have to contend with that. So we got the cricket burgers, we got all the cricket protein, which not sure that that's really good for your body. I understand, John the Baptist was eating locusts and wild honey, out in the wilderness. That was a different time. Those locusts and that honey I could trust were non-GMO, organic, and I'm not sure. Maybe locusts have a better, more human-friendly protein profile, but I wouldn't be eating bugs, and I certainly wouldn't be eating a lot of these impossible plant-based burgers because a lot of times it's just a whole bunch of low-quality processed crap that's made to taste like a burger. Lab grown is one of the newer ones that are coming out. It's technically made out of an animal cell, but it's cultured inside of a lab to grow into the shape and texture of certain cuts of meat. It's disgusting. I know. Sounds kind of wrong, but it is what it is. But the reason why I bring it up is because you will start seeing a lot of meat packaged that way, and it'll say it's cell cultured. Lab grown is not really a good marketing term, so I doubt you'll ever see that on there. But if you see something that's cell cultured or something to that effect, look into it yourself. I'd probably just stay away from it. Yeah, I'd probably go with things that are either organic, grass finished, or grass fed, grass finished. Even better, I just find a local butcher or find a farm that you can do a subscription order from. White Oak Pastures is one that's they're out in Georgia. There's plenty of farms that are like that. And for anybody that wants to try it, I think White Oak Pastures still supplies to Publix as well, so you can get some of their meat and try it. If you like it. I think it's actually pretty good. There are some really good farms that are starting to supply to the local grocery stores, and they're shipping online too, where you can save money by ordering, and you can taste the difference. I mean, you can really taste the difference in the food. Um, yeah, meat in general, some people worry about it more. I worry about plants a little bit more, to be honest. That's just me. Meat, just buy the best that you can get. If it doesn't have the organic label, okay, we could get into how bad things really are when it comes to buying food in the stores and how the supply chains kill a lot of the nutritional content by taking too long to get to the store. We could get into that, but if we did, I just don't know how feasible it is for all of y'all listening to be able to get to a farm, to be able to switch to ordering all of your stuff either online and getting it shipped from a local farm. I just don't think that we're there yet, at least not for everybody. But I will say, the closer that you can get it to the source, like if you were able to go out and pick food out of the ground and then take it home and cook it that night, you can get to control the ripeness. You certainly get a lot more nutrients because the time from harvest to the table, is less than a week. I mean, anything's at the grocery store, I mean, you're looking at weeks, months, and the nutritional value a lot of times just naturally either cuts down in half or just goes out completely. So, we could talk about how the supply chain system itself causes a lot of our food to lose nutrition. Never mind the soil aspect, never mind the toxicity aspect, just the fact that our food takes so long to get here and we have to harvest it before it is ripe, before the nutrient profile is actually fully built up, just so it won't spoil. So you can have better margins because you have less food to throw away, or the companies do. You see that we're getting to this point where our food has no nutrition. And if our food has no nutrition, what is our body going to rebuild itself out of? We have, there's this old saying, 90 for life. Joel Wallach, would always say that. But the 90 for life is referring to 90 essential nutrients between your vitamins, minerals, your amino acids, your fatty acids, and whatnot. You need all of those. Your body uses all of those in very specific ways in order to keep your body operating at peak function. When it doesn't have access to those nutrients, bad things start happening. And what I mean by that is that your body starts having to make executive decisions. Do we cut off this service because we don't have the necessary ingredients to build this, or to activate this, or to maintain this? Or do we substitute things in, like glyphosate can substitute glycine? This is an interesting concept. Um, and this might explain why we have so many non contact fractures or tears happening in people, because Glyphosate tends to have an affinity for your body's connective tissue, which is a high glycine content in that cell matrix. So if you've got tons of glyphosate from playing sports on treated lawns, whether it's golfing or whether you're spraying your lawn constantly, or your neighbor is, um, or you're just ingesting a ton of GMO foods, or it's in your drinking water, or you're just getting sprayed in it because you live near a farm and they have their planes come in and spray. Either way, if you're getting inundated with a ton of glyphosate, especially if you're not eating enough protein or getting enough protein in your diet, that body might look at that glyphosate. So it kind of looks like glycine. Will it fit? And it'll take that glyphosate and put it in the DNA, or not DNA, but it'll put it kind of in the cellular matrix. And the problem is that when glyphosate's in there, it's brittle. And so it's kind of like chalk. It's not bendable. As soon as you put a little tension on it, it snaps. So that creates a very functional problem for us. If we have weak tissues, weak integrity in our muscles and in our tissues, that's gonna lead to bad health outcomes for us. Now, with me doing a lot of detoxification, especially with the name being Beyond Detox, we've got solutions for that. I don't want anybody to think that once these poisons are inside of you, you can never get them out. There's nothing that you can do, or you're gonna have to eat a whole bunch of oh gosh, what is it? Kimchi or some special probiotics just to get them out. We have stuff for that. One in particular I like. We carry a binder called Virad Chem. Um, HMET binder and carboxy. But I always tell people, be careful when you do carboxy. Don't start with carboxy. It's not friendly. It's very effective, but it's very strong. The point is these things, you can detox them out of your system. We do see it a lot, especially on our pre and post total tox burden test after people do protocols. But it is going to require you to adjust your diet, work on your diet. Now, I do want to get into, just for a second, I want to talk about grains for a second. Grains grains tend to cause people a lot of problems in America. I know there are different cultures that eat a lot of that can be pretty grain heavy. I'm not sure if it's just because we have GMO'd things and we've got so much poison on them that they're causing problems in our GI tracts, but or the fact that we're stripping them of their nutritional content, we're not sprouting them, we're not doing ancient practices that denatured a lot of kind of anti-nutrient properties that naturally come in grains. But the point I'm making with this, grains tend to cause a lot of inflammatory problems and allergy related problems in people, whether it's food intolerances, food sensitivities, or people get things like, celiac, severe gluten sensitivities. Grains themselves tend to disrupt people's blood sugars, especially the more that you grind them down into finer flours and make things out of them that are flour. You're getting rapid absorption of sugar into the body, and it can lead to, dysglycemia. Well, it can lead to what we call just blood sugar fluctuations. And you do those fluctuations back and forth over time, it can cause problems, whether that ends up becoming insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, or maybe it becomes hypoglycemia. I see hypoglycemia with people that are sick with mold, Lyme, and other toxic conditions. But grains just tend to overly inflame people, cause a lot of unexplained joint pain. Gluten itself, I do tell people, I think there really is something to going gluten free. I think we really do have a real problem with gluten in America. We see it tied to brain dysfunctions, neurological dysfunctions. Um, we see it tied to a lot of gut problems and a lot of autoimmune conditions, whether it's autoimmune thyroid, um, wheat itself, anything that contains wheat. So wheat, barley, rye, A glutinous grain has this ability to open your intestinal lining, opens up holes in it. It can activate a um, it can activate this molecule called zonulin, and zonulin will tell the intestinal wall to open up to let nutrients through. So when you're eating wheat, especially eating wheat all the time, you're triggering that zonulin to tell your intestinal tract to open up, um, you know, open up the barrier to let stuff in. And the problem is, wheat by itself, it's usually not broken down well today. It's almost like your body cannot break it down to its essential parts, and so it's an undigested particle. And this undigested particle, along with all the other things, also including any bacteria, fungus, or parasites that happen to be inside of your intestinal tract, they can also get through there. And what happens when they get past the cell wall in your intestinal tract? They can get into your bloodstream. They can get to circulation. Now your immune system goes red alert and starts tagging these things as foreign entities, and it's going to start making maybe an antigenic response, or there. I'll say there's a lot of different immune responses that you can have, not just antigens. But I think you can start to see this as like you're looking at inflammation, and now your immune system is going to start being suspicious or creating memories of what these things called. We call it molecular mimicry. Um, we talked a little bit about this when Dr. Brandon was on the autoimmune episode, but there is an interesting correlation with a lot of these food particles, or yeah, we'll just say food particles, wheat in particular, with the wheat gluten protein. It creates leaky gut, or it gets into the blood circulation. It causes the immune system to go haywire. It can start leading to autoimmune conditions. It creates a huge inflammatory response, and that inflammatory response is not just limited to the gut. It can get to the joints. It can get to the brain, because the brain has a very close connection with the gut. It can affect neurotransmitter functions. It can also deal with mood, behavioral problems. Yeah, all this just from wheat. All this from food in general, but even wheat specifically just can cause so many problems. That's why I usually tell people, find out how to cut gluten out of your diet for the foreseeable future, especially if you are trying to heal. I mean, if we're dealing with an illness, if you're working with me, if you're doing any type of protocol, I usually tell people we really have to cut gluten out. This applies to alcohols too. A lot of alcohol, beer, these are made from gluten, and this just exacerbates the problem because alcohol is a poison to your liver and your body. And, unfortunately, some people are really stuck on the bottle, and that's not going to do you any favors. It can poison the liver. Um, it can affect your mood. It can lead to things like high uric acid, can lead to gout. It's not good. That's all I'll say is it's not good. So, kind of covering proteins, fats, carbohydrates. Carbs, everybody's got to eat them. I don't tell people to cut them out completely. There is a level of experimentation. You got to figure out what works for you. Do you work really well on just eating meat? You know, do a lot of your symptoms go away, or do you feel at your peak performance if you do something like carnivore, where you're really just eating meat? Yeah, that is a possible diet. And for some people, a large growing number of people, they say that it is a very sustainable diet for them. And a lot of health improvement, or a lot of health challenges seem to be held at bay. I say, okay, great. If food alone can do that, then that's great, because that calms down inflammation and it makes my work easier. Do I think that food alone today um, will fix a lot of the chronic health challenges that we're dealing with? My personal opinion, I I don't put a lot of stock in that. Partly because of everything we've gone over today, the food just does not have as much nutrition as it should, and all the poisoning that's in there. I say we got 21st century problems. We need 21st century tools. This is usually why I do a lot of detoxification. And then we'll talk here. We'll wrap it up here just a little bit. I'll show you what things you can do to effectively supplement the missing nutrients that you need. Because I just don't think you can get it from diet anymore. I would love to be wrong about that, but currently where we are in America, in our current state, I just don't see the soil and the food yielding the necessary nutrition that we need to um, by itself in order to fix all of our problems. And one thing that I see, in practice, and a lot of my colleagues see it too. It's not just me saying this. Food can when people start getting on restrictive diets and they start getting symptoms and reducing, you'll see people who get stuck on eating that way for long term. And some diets are not the some I would say there's no diet that's probably best to be sticking on long term forever. We change with the seasons, whatever foods are available. That's what our ancestors did. I think food can help keep keep certain conditions stalemated. But if you stray from your diet and then you start getting these illnesses again, or you start getting symptoms come in, to me, it says we've been putting a band-aid on this. We're not actually fixing the issue. We've just found a way to stalemate it and keep it at bay. Oftentimes it requires us to go, well, I'll say oftentimes if we go in, we open up drainage pathways, we get some binders, and we do some really, really, really good, deep detoxification work. We do parasite cleansing and we'll just say microbial cleansing. So we get out the hidden stealth overgrowths of bacteria, fungus, and parasites because they're all in there. They're all in there to some certain extent. If you're eating any type of the American diet, um, even if you're trying good, you're still putting in a lot of poisons that are going to attract those things to get into your to grow in your body. So, um, going through all of these kind of systemic detoxification programs, it'll help remove a lot of the stressors that are burning up the what little nutrition you are getting. I always say detoxification or not detoxification, excuse me. I always say toxicity creates deficiencies. And so if toxicity is burning through our reserves of nutrients, it's forcing our body to use more of them than it should. Then if we're able to get all of the toxic stuff causing all of these inflammatory fires in our body, well, I mean, that's like paying off a whole bunch of debt. I mean, imagine right now of all the debts that you pay out, whether it's your car, your house payment, credit card, student loans. Just imagine if you didn't have those debts you had to pay anymore. See how much money you're going to start being able to accumulate for yourself. I look at it the same way. We kick out a lot of the toxic stuff, mold, bacteria, heavy metals, chemicals, radioactive particles, EMF, parasites, all that stuff. We're taking all this stress off the body. The body is no longer having to spend its energy, its nutrient reserves, whether it comes from the bone or whether it's coming from food or its own tissues. Now it's able to save it up on itself and it's able to repair itself and it's able to be a more efficient machine. So that's why we talk about food. You got to eat food every day. It's a non-negotiable, and whatever you choose to eat is going to have a direct impact on what your body builds itself out of. I mean, where do you think the body gets the building blocks to create you? Your cells turn over. I would say probably about every 10 years, I think every one of your cells is actually fully replaced. So you're not physically the same person you were back then because you have a whole bunch of new cells. How are they built? It's by the stuff that you ate. So if you eat good, then your body can't has the the physical foundation to be strong, healthy, and function right. Now, let me see if there's anything else that I've missed on here. So we talked about alcohol. Alcohol just alcohols may make you feel better, but it's not going to help you get healthier. Let's just talk quickly about what we call PLU codes on produce. You may see this occasionally. I see this stuff pop up on social media about what to look for foods. It's pretty interesting. Um, PLU codes, usually you see that on your either on your produce and your fruits. 4 digits, typically it's conventional, means sprayed. 5 digits starting with a 9 could be organic. 5 digits starting with an 8, GMO, but it's not always used. Now, chances are, if you most things are labeled, so you can tell is it organic or not. But you could always start getting into PLU codes and read them and see if they, see if they help you or if they reveal any information that's important. Meat labels, best. I would say the best thing you could reasonably find at a store is grass fed and grass finished. I don't see that often, but there is actually something to being grass finished as well. Pasture raised, it's better than conventional. Natural, really interesting. You see a lot of stuff with natural, but to my knowledge, it still is just a marketing term that doesn't have any like either there's not like a law or something about it. Like natural is just kind of like a meaningless throwaway word. You don't have to have any proof for it. If that makes sense. Uh, Usually we tell people always buy ingredients or not ingredients. Always buy food that has one ingredient. An apple is an apple. So we say, shop around the perimeter of the store, not in the aisles. Around the perimeters where you get your produce, you get your meats, you get your dairies. Uh, Dairy, I'll just make a quick thing here. Conventional milk, when you pasteurize milk and when you homogenize it too, you denature the food and it creates it damages a lot of the enzymes and the bacteria, things that are necessary in order to make the food work properly, and it can end up being a poison inside of the body. I may have to get to that one later. I did have some research on how on studies on how and like animals raised on pasteurized milk tend to have some pretty bad outcomes compared to those that are on raw milk. Now, raw milk you can't is illegal in certain states or certain areas. You need to check your stuff for that. There are some companies that do very low VAT pasture, and it clearly tastes and functions better in people's bodies. I tend to tell people just go for raw cheeses, go for organic cheeses, see what works with your body. I'm not one of those people that thinks that milk or dairy is only for those that have is only for growing baby calves, and you know I tend to think that the creator knew what he was making. We've been using it for thousands of years. It's been very healthy for a number of people. There are folks that use it as a healing superfood. The Indians, not Native American, well, Native Americans may have too, but Indians like from India have traditionally used um, milk, prepared milks in order to heal from a number of different ailments. So I like dairy, but dairy is not a friend to a lot of people, especially with our guts messed up. So you have to navigate that for yourself, see if it makes you feel good, if it causes you a lot of problems. And always, I would say, always choose organic and try as much as you possibly try as hard as you can to get it as close to the source as possible. You know, um, like I said, raw cheese you actually can find in the stores. I don't remember if it's Organic Valley that does it, but you can find them pretty often. Let's see if there's anything else on here. Include. We'll just hit one final thing, and that's on eggs. I like eggs. I think eggs are great. Eggs are really rich in uh, cholesterol and choline, which your body needs in order to function and make healthy cells. I don't shy away from cholesterol. The liver is going to make all the cholesterol that it needs. If you eat extra cholesterol, I think one, it's going to be negligible. I think it's going to one be negligible, and I think that the liver has a feedback mechanism that sees if you have the extra dietary cholesterol, it just won't make as much. But if you got a cholesterol problem, we need to consider looking at the liver and other things rather than what you're eating. That's just my 2 cents. So I think that I covered a lot of the stuff on here. So we're going to finish up by showing a couple of things that you can do. I do have some simple solutions you can easily get from my store. I do use this with people, and it works incredibly well, or I think it works really well in people filling the nutrition gap that we're not getting from our food. And before we do that, let me just see if we've got here uh, grape. They're probably referring to the grape seed. Yeah, yeah, grapeseed extract. It's really good. It's really good. It's different from rapeseed oil, which is I think probably what you were referring to earlier. But yeah, grapeseed extract we use quite a few supplements. I think too some of our prebiotic toothpaste use that too. Yeah, grapeseed extract's great. Now, intermittent fasting, yeah, 16-hour, 8 fasting. This is a great thing too. We talk about all this food. We didn't talk anything about when to, how to time your eating. But intermittent fasting is, when you have a small window that you eat for the day, and then you spend the rest of the time not eating. I think most people know what that is at this point. Um, Freeze dried beef supplements. Okay, yeah, that's cool. That could be a glandular. Glandulars are a type of supplement that we use where we actually are eating the organs of an animal. I don't recommend that you always do that. Typically, what I've found, or what we're educated with, is you want to cycle those instead of doing them constantly, just because you don't want to be getting a buildup of the hormones. You know, those organs are very potent healing foods, and usually, there's the idea of this like supporting like, and that just means like, yeah, liver problem, uh, eating beef liver, chicken liver, might help with that. It can nourish that organ with the nutrients that it needs. It's an interesting concept. It's an old natural concept. A lot of people in the natural health space still follow that and use that with, it's pretty good success. Maybe we can get Brendan, or one of my other guests to come on here and talk about glandulars and when to use them. Bullet eggs, grass finished meat. Uh, yeah, we've got some of those grass fed and finished meat sticks too. Yeah, I always see that those ads from Paleo Valley for their meat sticks, but it's a good thing. We even carry the Paleo Valley and on our online store. But yeah, those are great things. They're good snacks. Protein, people don't get enough protein. It is the one conversation I'm always having with all my clients. You're not eating enough protein. And it's not like we're counting their macros or anything. I'm not talking like a nutritionist or like a dietitian. You know, that's not really my lane. I don't even want to get into that lane, but I do tell people, just because of the conversations I have, and when we get honest about what we're eating, like, that's just not enough food. Some people just don't eat enough food, and if they would, they may have better health outcomes. You got to eat. But I like having protein. Protein is what your body's built out of. You want healthy muscles, you want healthy bones, you want healthy cells, you want something to heal. You got to have protein. Fats and carbs, they have their place. They're used for energy, maybe a couple of other things. But protein is what actually rebuilds your body. So you need to have it. So I don't shy away from meat. I love meat, and I think people would do a lot better to start eating a lot more meat. um, instead of kind of shying away from it, eggs included. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised too. Is that mentioning the dry beef supplements and the grass finished stuff has helped. I wouldn't be surprised if you've noticed improvements. One in your physical performance, in your sleep, in your mental stability, emotional regulation. These I tend to find meat just being much more of a healing food, and carbs tend to make people go crazy and have a lot of pain. I do think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the way that we process our food and the poisons that are in it. It may not even be so much the food, it just might be that it's all poisoned. And really, I'm concerned that American food is a lot more poisoned than other nations. So, I just don't see other nations having the problems to the extent that we do. With a lot of my colleagues that I talk with, America just seems to have a lot of kind of unnecessary problems, and a good portion of it is from what we're consuming. I didn't even touch on coffee. Or there's a lot of things we didn't touch on. A lot of this again is supposed to be low hanging fruit. Shop around the perimeter of the store, make your own food, learn to cook, learn to pack things. Don't rely on convenience foods to the extent that others do or that you may have in the past. Uh, Soft drinks, fizzy drinks, things with sugar, we really need to limit those. Why? Because a lot of that stuff causes uh, we'll just say it can cause nutrient loss. It can cause your body to liberate a lot of its minerals in order to buffer the I'll just say to buffer the acidity from that, and focus on drinking more water. I mean, it really is this simple. 3 meals a day, prepare your own food, use spices, don't skimp on stuff, use real salt, like, the Celtic sea salt or the Himalayan salt. Again, learn to prepare your own food, enjoy the art of cooking, be proactive about it. It really can mitigate a lot of unnecessary health problems. There we go, quality beef tallow. Yeah, see, we I could sum everything up that I just said into something that um Tox Free Doc. That's his profile on social media. You can find him on Instagram and other places. He's a fun guy to read. He's got a lot of good nuggets of wisdom, and sometimes he's just very direct. But he had summed up really nicely everything we that I just went over in detail tonight, and that is the reason why we're so sick is because we're synthetic. We're eating synthetic. We're not eating natural. And along with that, we are not engaging in life. We're like spectating. Everything we're like consuming rather than being engaged. And so Papa Bones, to your point, is everything it sounds like you're having there, you're involved, you're cooking, you're not just having this stuff just served up to you and just handing money over and saying, hey, just give it to me. It's being human. It's getting back to doing, and there's something very therapeutic and something very even spiritual about just interacting in this world rather than being on a computer constantly, rather than somebody cooking all of your meals and it's just fast food corporate stuff that's put together, has no flavor, it's all artificially pumped up. There is a cost more than just health. I think we start to become very divorced from the from this reality. We become very divorced from our purpose, from God. The experience of this animating, what was it, Alex Jones always says, animating contest of liberty. Well, I kind of look at it as just this you know, it's just the joy of being alive. And food is so connected to the joy of being alive. We are ingesting the life of other things to give us life. Thank you, God, for these provisions. Thank you for this life that's been given that I can have life. So there is something very deep to it. I think it goes a lot further beyond just a nice analogy, a nice sentiment. There's something very deep um, in that, and that's really where I kind of want to end this tonight. Eat real food, connect with food. Food has a very special place in the human experience, and it does come at a cost. Our food comes at the life of another. A lot of us are very divorced from that. I mean, I know I'm divorced from that, but but at least I can recognize that, you know, where our food comes from, learning to grow it, there's a deep connection with it to this earth, to our relationship with God. So the more that we can get back to eating well, the more we can get back to being human. So with that said, appreciate you guys all being here tonight. Um, I know this was another rant, but still, hopefully, you've gotten something out of it. I hope that it helps keep you motivated to do good. And as promised, I'm going to switch over to my presentation mode for just a second. I'm going to share my screen with you and show you a couple of quick things that I find are really, really useful. So this here is from our dispensary. This is not actually in our online store. Working on getting it there. But if anybody wants to get this, um, reach out to me. I'll be glad to send this over where you can order it. You can put it on recurring subscription too and get it at a cheaper price. I personally use this. It's awesome. What's nice about it, in fact, if I can show the ingredient list here, you've got your full suite, not in super high doses either, because more is not always better. But this is your full spectrum of vitamins, minerals, and other proprietary things, or what we call superfood blends. In fact, if I can zoom in on it, we can maybe see some of that on here. But I really like this because this has a whole bunch of usable protein. So it's called Perfect Amino. This happens to be a meal replacement shake if you want it to be. I just use it because it's got a full suite of the vitamins, minerals, and whatnot, and it's got 7.5 grams of what we call the perfect ratio of amino acids. We use this for people that either need to put on weight, who are wasting away, or just if we want to get nice, meaningful, therapeutic doses of protein in somebody. So, for our elderly folks that really can't digest meat well, we can put this in there. We also have bone broth proteins and whatnot. Um, I'll show you that one too because everything else we actually do have in our online store. Let me find the other shop. So if we go here, we'll pull up a thing called Core Nutrients. This is, super multivitamin. We have them in 60 capsules and 120 capsules. You can save if you get some more. So I'm going to click on this here. And looking on here, you can see this is a huge label. This is a very huge label. So we've got good doses of all of our vitamins in very high quality formats too. So we got our methylcobalamin, we got our folate is 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. We've also got things like we've got iodine, we've got PQQ, which is for rebuilding mitochondria or mitochondrial genesis. We've got boron, we've got K2, inositol, we've even got a lipase protease blend, molybdenum, chromium, a lot of things that are necessary to make your blood sugar regulate. Some of these things you may like. I don't see what's so cool, what's so special about them. But it's really good to be able to have things like choline, iodine, magnesium in a tri formula, taurate, bisglycinate, chelate, and things like well, we'll just say PQQ. I always want to call it bio PQQ, but I think it's actually a branded one. But PQQ we use for rebuilding mitochondria, which is so important because that's how you make more energy. And we have lutein and other things in here. So that's a great high powered um, multivitamin, multi mineral. And one other thing that we have here too, just because we are talking about protein, bone broth protein is really cool. We have a few types. We carry 100% grass fed bone broth. And then I also have one that I really like here. Um, Let me find it, chocolate bone broth. So for those that maybe don't need the multivitamin or don't want to do that, they want to do something just really high quality bone broth, maybe for a gut protocol. This is a strong, therapeutic. This is a supplement brand. That's why you see the price is what it is. This stuff is really powerful. So we're getting 21 grams of protein. And we see it's bone broth, collagen, protein, hydro beef, cocoa powder, medium chain triglycerides. Nothing dirty in here. These are practitioner formulas, so we trust them to really get the job done. One final thing I'm going to show you here. Let me find the iShop Purium. You can find this on Beyond Detox as well. It'll take you to this link here. This is a whole like kind of foods nutrition. So this is from farms that are actually growing food using proper agricultural techniques that yield food that is very high in nutrition. And this is what we call our ultimate lifestyle transformation. This is a do it yourself 90-day program that we offer. And this not only helps with re-nutrifying your body, it also does some detoxification on its own as well. It actually has the perfect amino that I just showed in the Power Meal. It has that in tablet form here. We've got things here, these probiotics that can actually there's research that they detox glyphosate, so that's nice there. And we even have a para cleanser here that not only helps with reestablishing bowel function, but does a pretty good job at doing gentle cleansing of parasites. And usually from this is a great place to start for people who are not sure what they want to do or they really just want to focus on nutrition. This is also a great place to land after doing some more intensive protocols detoxification, because at that point your body is better able to handle nutrients, and this is a nutrient powerhouse. Like I said, it's a 3-month program. But this is kind of like our comprehensive thing. If you need to get nutrition in your body, this is a full protocol to do it. So we got a lot of different ways to support. I just want to make sure that you guys knew all of these different avenues that we have for helping support your health. Obviously, work on your diet, make it a habit, make it a lifestyle for you, and then just understand too, we've got a long way to go to get our food healthy again. So in the meantime, let's choose healthy supplements that actually work, that make a difference, that are not throwing money down the drain. And so the things that I showed you there, the things that we curate on our online store, I use those extensively with people. I see them get results, more so than plenty of the other things that are out there. So with all that being said, hope you guys enjoyed it tonight. Y'all have a good evening. Take a look at some of these things that I showed y'all tonight. See if it makes sense for you. If you like it, try it. I think you'll agree that you can feel the difference with it. And as always, if y'all have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, support at beyonddetox.com.